Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Glad to have you here. It's Monday. Yeah, I know. But we're here to cheer you up and give you the best in news talk for the morning. I'm glad to have you here. Make sure you click like and subscribe. Hit that like button if you enjoy the content. And if it's your first time here today and you're really enjoying that, make sure that you subscribe to the channel that you're watching us on so you can get updates whenever we go live. Wake Up America shows every Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time, 2 hours of news talk, great interviews, great guests, the best topics, a great way to start your day. Second only maybe to our own coffee brand here at the Wake Up America show that you can find over at ap4libertyshop.com. Our delicious Founding Flavors brand, certified woke free. Chef's kiss, absolutely delicious. Enjoying my favorite today, Franklin's Electric Elixir. If you haven't tried it yet, make sure you do that over at ap4libertyshop.com. All right, let's get into the news. Alabama boat brawl leads to the birth of Black Aquaman. I love it. I love it when it's so alliterative. The news stories this morning. Yeah, an outbreak of racial violence in Alabama over the weekend led to the birth of a new meme, Black Aquaman. We're going to talk about the incident that occurred over the weekend when a scuffle that broke out between whites and blacks degenerated into absolute chaos. I've got the video as well that shows the beginning of the incident, who started it, and then I have some highly hilarious commentary that we're going to play as well for it, so you guys can see what exactly happened. Hope that you had a nice weekend this morning. Better than those who were involved in the Alabama racial boat brawl. We'll talk about that though in a little bit. Big news. Elon Musk announced that he will fund the legal bills for anyone who has lost their job over liking tweets. We're going to talk about that this morning. After NASCAR indefinitely suspended a driver for liking a George Floyd meme. Yeah. Yeah, I've got the meme. We'll talk about that this morning. NASCAR has indefinitely suspended one of their drivers for liking a meme about George Floyd. You can imagine. It's not the best meme I've ever seen. I did laugh when I saw it, but I'm not supposed to because we're all supposed to be woke these days and to think that he is the Saint George of fentanyl is supposed to be a hero these days. We'll talk about that a little bit later this morning. And then at 7:35 this morning, I saw the film Oppenheimer by Christopher Nolan over the weekend. Sat down yesterday with my wife on the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima and um, considered the history of the creation of the nuclear weapon in the run up to the dropping of the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's a 3 hour long film. It's rather plodding, but it does have some ups and downs, and we'll talk about that this morning at 7:30 and a little bit about the response that people have had to it. Have you seen the movie Oppenheimer yet? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. You can always text the show for free and have your comment read on the air by sending us a text at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what's going on in the world. I do monitor the chat, but I can't always see exactly what's happening in real time. So I do my best over there. But if you do a super chat for the show, which is basically a little like tip jar, then I can filter for those, and those also get read onto the air. But we also, of course, offer you the opportunity to have your voice heard for free by texting in at 573-319-1586. That's again 573-319-1586. Looks like somebody sent me a meme on Friday that I'm just now seeing of Mia Khalifa with one of her famous quotes. LW78 says he saw Oppenheimer on Saturday. He liked the movie, but he especially liked the ending. Oh, you no. How dare you? I think I get the joke there, LW. Nice to see you this morning, by the way, brother. Glad to have you here. Good morning, Boris the Blade Parody Troll King, joining us over on Twitter this morning. We're glad to have all of our Twitter friends as well. I see we've got a few people watching us over there. Glad to have our friends over watching us. We got some great content today. We're going to speak to Liz Mair. She is a US, UK libertarian conservative type to talk to us about the National Health Service. That's Britain's socialized medical system, central medical system, and that is socialism, by the way. because it's a government-run healthcare system, right? Government controls the means of production of healthcare. The National Health Service is offering gender affirming care to 7-year-olds. I think you and I know what that means. We're going to talk about that today with Liz Mair. She's going to join us this morning at 8 a.m. on the Wake Up America show. And this is one of the better reasons to watch the Wake Up America show, especially live, in order to stay up to date with what's going on in the world. And I'd like to highly encourage you to recommend our show to a friend. I don't do a lot of marketing of the show itself, and I probably do need to step that up. So one of the ways that I think would be a great way for us to grow our community is for you to encourage through word of mouth, at least one friend to join us on the live stream in the morning to listen to the show, because it's such a great way for you to stay connected to what's going on in the world. You hear terrific up to date interviews about news you can use right at the top of the morning. Get your day started in a great way. Invite a friend to come and join us here on the show and help us to grow the community over here at Wake Up America. We'd be glad to have you. Let's see. Yeah, so we'll have Liz Mair this morning at 8 a.m. and she's going to talk to us because she's living in the UK these days. Talk to us about children age 7 receiving transgender treatment through the National Health Service. Then we're going to talk about that with Liz Mair. Should be good at 8 o'clock. At 8:23, I've got a video that shows how the military is using taxpayer funds to fund transitions. So we'll transition from one story to another. Da, 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 terrible pun. At 8:30 this morning, we've got Jon Miltimore to talk about the Hollywood writers' strike. Apparently, no new talks will continue, but apparently the WGA, Writers Guild of America, can't agree to resume negotiations. So this strike is going to continue on indefinitely. And after watching Oppenheimer this weekend, I called my buddy Jon Miltimore to see if he had also seen the film so that we could possibly do a joint review of it. Turns out that no, he has kids, so he went and took his kids to see Meg 2, which is a Megalodon 2, some shark movie, which I didn't even know existed. I didn't know there was a Meg 1, but apparently now there's a Meg 2. So we're going to talk about that this morning at 8:30 this morning with Jon Miltimore, the writer's strike, what it means for Hollywood, and the sort of the milestones that movies like Oppenheimer and Meg 2 have passed. It should be interesting. All right, what have we got here for the top of the show? All right, so Alabama boat brawl. This was an interesting story. I've got it here explained in details. Video showing a group of white men attacking a black dock worker in Alabama have gone viral on social media. So this incident took place after a pontoon boat blocked an area where a riverboat was parking near Montgomery Riverfront Park. This was on Saturday night. The Montgomery police have said that several people had been detained and charges are pending. So several reckless individuals attacking a man who was doing his job were uploaded to the internet, of course, went viral yesterday and caused Black Aquaman to trend. Let's go ahead and start and take a look at what happened here over the weekend. This is this boat brawl. I've got to play. Now, the funny thing is about this tweet here from this Chris Evans character that I'm going to play for you. This shows the Alabama ferry brawl, how it started. But I tried to just show the tweet by itself, but this person, Chris Evans, must be a lefty because he has me blocked. And just a sort of little background, I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but leftists have block lists that they all share online, and I'm on that many of their lists. So despite having never interacted with any of these people in my life, I'm on a list of like racist, sexist, misogynist, fascist, Nazi people, whatever, from the left. So I will frequently see tweets sometimes in news stories like this that I can watch. But if I watch this, if I click on this, if I go to his page, you can see you're blocked. Chris Evans, not Captain America. I've literally never seen this person before in my life until this news story. Anyways, here's the video from the Alabama boat brawl.
Is crew from our little dinner cruise boat who got off our ship to go over there to move that black pontoon boat on his own because those guys who parked there were told not to leave it there, and they left.
So let's see what's happening. So this pontoon boat over here, right? This was parked apparently in the wrong spot. So the dock has security guards to inform people that, hey, you're not allowed to park here. Now here come the white boys with their backwards caps, and they're getting in his face. All right, security guards telling him, hey, listen, you can't park your pontoon boat here. I told you that you can't do that because we've got these tour boats that come up in here, right? This kind of stuff happens all the time, right, with docks where they just don't know. And so you've got a whole group of African Americans here who are watching what's going on. And it doesn't look good for the Alabama white boys because it's sort of like firing on Fort Sumter. I don't care how high your ideals were or how much you say the Civil War wasn't about slavery. You shouldn't have fired on Fort Sumter, you idiots, because here we go. Now, this is what happens, and here's how it starts, right? There's no violence that's occurred yet. You know, you do have the black people screaming, "Little bitch, get out the way." Move the boat. Like, all right, fine, I'm going to move the boat. However, one white gentleman, can't understand a damn word they're saying. All right, so everything's fine, you know. He's told them to move their boat. Doesn't seem to be a problem. We're moving on until finally somebody decided to start a brawl. Right about here it comes. He's telling him he's got to move his boat. They're pointing. Now, this is just how it starts, but it degenerates. He's saying something, and there it goes. Right there. Hat up in the air, starts throwing punches. Now, this is how it starts. And it does not look good for a group of white guys to be jumping in. And remember that time that Tucker Carlson got in trouble for saying that white guys don't fight like this? They don't gang up on people. Well, Tucker, I don't know if you're going to watch this video or not. But now here comes the first black man. Step in, and he's trying to stop it, right? He's not like throwing punches yet or anything like that. He's just trying to stop the violence. Right, good for him. All right, he's not a non-interventionist, but then the fight starts to degenerate here, and now this is where it gets more fun, because at this point, this is where we're going to start getting some fun commentary. Now, this is how the Black Aquaman meme was born. Watch this.
Goddamn, bro, I never thought I'd see this shit happen in real fucking life.
Yeah, there's gonna be some bad language here, FYI.
Yeah, right there, nigga, straight smoke signal. It's chestnut checkers.
Now, pause. He threw his hat up in the air, and he calls it a smoke signal, which I think it kind of is, which means that, you know, the fight is on. He's calling for his homies.
Smoke signal. It's chestnut checkers. Big Buddy had to eat a couple of them, but he got his signal off. He ready to shoot the fade with Larry the Lobster, but he already know he outnumbered. But as soon as that hat hit the ground, nigga, every super tough nigga in the area starts scrambling. Thank God he got that signal off, because now he getting jumped by the racists. How I know they racist? Because these niggas swimming in khakis. Who the fuck does that, nigga? Bro, if these niggas don't hurry the fuck up. This first nigga coming down used to set the edge for Virginia Tech. Look at that shit, nigga. At first, he just wanted to calm the situation down because it was still too many of them, nigga. But now we got reinforcements coming. No, not the security guard. Black Aquaman, nigga. Hey, once they seen this shit happen, he confused. First, he just wanted to calm the situation down because it was still too many of them, nigga. But now we got reinforcements coming. No, not the security guard. Black Aquaman, nigga. Hey, once they seen this shit happen, he confused the Caucasians, nigga. They start scrambling. Bro, they're in the fucking water now. What the fuck? Bro, that Smurder hat got him Black Aquaman and 2 other tough niggas. And you thought that he was just gonna stop because now he's safe? Hell no, it's time to get my lick back, nigga. These niggas marching down there like the nation of domination. Now I know it's finna get good. You know why? Because these niggas got on jeans and sneakers and they pull their pants up in unison. Now they wanna talk. Dude, let me explain. It was your guy. He fucking started the shit. Bro, what the fuck? Damn, he smacked you in front of your bitch, said I'm the captain now. She saw that shit and Karen started screaming, nigga. That Karen screamed like they had signal. All of a sudden, nigga, the biggest Brad of all time showed up. This motherfucker ran to the ring, get his ass whooped at the Royal Rumble. I know it's hella shit, but look at Karen in the green dress. She done turned this shit into pandemonium because she hit the fake police. Survivor Series, bitch, you get your ass whooped like everybody else. It's ass whoopings everywhere and the real police done showed up and they got pepper spray. But ain't none of that stopping Ashley from getting her ass whooped. She got mollywopped and tossed over the top rope into the river water. Back to the squared circle. Now that Chad and Brad know the police is there, they back tough again. They came from under there like some roaches. Nation of domination don't give a fuck about none of that shit. You finna get slid anyway. This where it's fucked up. Big Brad right there ran under the pier, jumped in the water, and left his homie out there. Now somebody mama got sent to the Sandman, and that ass whooping was for him. Where are their fucking parents?
Yeah, well, exactly. Where are their parents?
Brad and Chad's dad trying the same shit, but hold on. They been whooping ass for way longer, nigga. This is gonna get ugly. Hey, go watch OG come through here thumping shit, nigga. He came through swinging them bitches like King on Tekken. But he didn't come by himself. He brought Mrs. Molly Whopper and her sister. Right when I was watching to see if they kicked Karen into the creek water, the camera panned out and I never expected this.
Oh, here comes.
Uncle Jesse done had enough.
He's got a hat. I know he's got a chair.
Security, ain't you supposed to be down there? The camera panned out and I never expected this.
Hold on, look up here, man.
Uncle Jesse done had enough. Everybody get their ass whooped. Security, ain't you supposed to be down there? Fuck that, I'm on break.
Like,
G chasing you down because he's gonna give you the ass whooping he owe you. Hey, remember Karen? I told you Jesse said anybody could get it. Bro, he had her look like Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, nigga. He took 2 inches off her height, nigga. You for sure going to jail. Hey, look, cutting the yellow not gonna let you get fucked up by yourself. Look at this assist right here. Push that bitch right into.
There it is, the Alabama boat brawl that spawned the Aquaman meme. So if you see today, Black Aquaman meme. So if you see today trending on, I guess we're not supposed to call it Twitter anymore. It's not Twitter. If you see it anymore, if you see Black Aquaman trending today, then you'll know what's going on there. Anyways, what do you think of that? You can send us a text today on the show at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. Nice to have you here today. What's his name? How many different chats do you have to keep an eye on now? Says Blue Trike. Good morning, Blue Trike. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 or 4 different chats that I try and keep an eye on, but I do have helpers. We've got Cheeky Mair who hooks us up over on YouTube and Rumble, and then of course my lovely wife Stephanie who helps us on YouTube and Rumble as well. So Steffi P for Liberty. I watch Tim Pool and Alex Jones every day, says the Onion Dip. You are my comic relief, bro. Good, glad to have it here, brother. We try and make the Wake Up America show fun or funny. Sometimes it's funny, but not because I want it to be, just something to laugh at. Glad to have you here on Onion Dip. Always appreciate your acerbic commentary. We've still got a lot more content for you to go. Elon Musk has stated that he will fund the legal bills for anyone who is suing. Listen to this. Here's his tweet in entirety. If you were unfairly treated by your employer due to posting or liking something on this platform, we will fund your legal bill. No limit. Please let us know. That's a big deal. This comes in light of the news that NASCAR has suspended one of their drivers, Noah Gragson, over his actions on social media. Yeah, NASCAR confirmed that the suspension is related to a meme making fun of the death of George Floyd, a post which Gragson had liked. And of course, we're all asking ourselves today, what is this meme that could have possibly gotten him into so much trouble? It must be something completely terrible, horribly racist, Nazi, xenophobic, anti-immigration, anti-woman, because of course, women are the ones who suffer the most in war. But here it is. This is the meme that got him suspended. Under the knee, counterfeit 20, drugs I took plenty, now I can't breathe. Sorry, I had to with 2 O's. Okay, so here it is. Under the knee. So I'm guessing that this is a reference to The Little Mermaid, in which case it must be sung under the knee, counterfeit 20, drugs I took plenty, now I can't breathe. What do they got? A lot of air. I got a hot Caribbean flair. Now I'm just making it up as I go. I don't know how far I can go on this one, but I think not bad, Austin. Not bad. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, we're glad to have you here. Make sure you click like and subscribe to the channel that you're watching us on this morning so you can get lots of good, fun content just like that. This is the tweet that got the NASCAR driver suspended for liking. How dare he? How terrible, how awful. Noah Gragson. He's had the Legacy Motor Club put out a statement saying, we've made the decision to suspend Noah Gragson effective immediately regarding his actions that do not represent the values of our team. Josh Berry will drive the number 42 entry for the weekend's NASCAR Cup Series race at Michigan, right? NASCAR then announced the indefinite suspension for Gragson for violating the member conduct section of the NASCAR rule book, right? So NASCAR fully supports the Legacy Motor Club's decision to suspend Noah Gragson following his actions on social media. They determined that he has violated the member conduct section of the 2023 NASCAR rulebook and placed him under indefinite suspension. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't understand or why NASCAR would possibly want to get involved in a struggle like this. I'm not a NASCAR guy, right? So if we have any NASCAR fans out there, I would be really curious to know, to hear from you about this sport. I know a lot of sports are going woke these days, but can somebody help me out here? You would think that NASCAR would be the absolute last sport to go woke, but the more I hear about what's going on over there at NASCAR, I mean, and here's the thing, that tweet is relatively tame in regards to poking fun at George Floyd. And it's not as if he didn't retweet it, like he didn't post it on his own page, right? He didn't respond to it. He didn't quote tweet. All he did was like the tweet, which in some ways, you know, when I say tweet, God, I know we're all supposed to be calling it x.com or Zeeting or something like that, but it's just there's a transition period we all need to go through with the death of Twitter and becoming something else. But in regards to what Gregson did, it doesn't even necessarily constitute a like of it anymore. I guess probably maybe he should have bookmarked the tweet, right? Because what I would do now is, instead of liking a tweet, because that's supposedly shows some kind of like a tacit support for whatever it is you're viewing. I always use the likes in order for me to be able to go back later and see which ones that I liked, in order to kind of keep tabs on them. But now there's a bookmark feature. Anyways, let's not get in the weeds of this, right? These are complicated politics, and we all know that Twitter isn't real life. But here's the thing: what happens on Twitter now impacts on Twitter. What happens on x.com/Twitter happens in the real world, because this guy is getting suspended from NASCAR, which seems to me to be one of the most anti-woke sports ever. At least in theory, it should be, right? Again, I don't know anything about NASCAR. Somebody hook me up here. What's the culture like over there? Um, it's even dumber. It was an IG post, says Magoo. John Rail says NASCAR must have some folks on payroll that do nothing but watch X 24/7. What a boring job that has to be. Yeah, I just don't get it. I don't understand. Here's the thing. It reminds me of Bud Light, right? Where they just don't seem to understand their customer base. But maybe the customer base of NASCAR will put up with something like this. But at least Elon Musk doesn't sound like he's willing to stand by and let something like this happen. He says, if you're unfairly treated by your employer due to posting or liking something on this platform, we will fund your legal bill. No limit. That's huge. That's huge. He says, please let us know. And I mean, people are responding to him like crazy. Marmot Respecter is saying, I've got a story for you. He's saying, go on. I'm seeing, I mean, thousands of people are responding to Elon Musk about this. Carrie Lake, of course, has to shoehorn in because she's, just desperate for attention. She says, how about if your election was stolen? Asking for a few friends in Arizona. Okay, Karen, what exactly does your election being stolen in Arizona have to do with people who are losing their jobs because they like tweets on Twitter? I don't get it. Carrie, I'm sorry. Are there any Carrie Lake fans out there? Because I don't know. I mean, I don't get the Carrie Lake fascination. Do you think she's going to be Donald Trump's VP? I think she is. I think she's going for that Donald Trump VP. I mean, have we been following all of the trash that's going on surrounding Donald Trump, this indictment and all this stuff? I did cover the story a bit last week, but it does seem to be just absolutely metastasizing into the cancer, of course, which it was absolutely expected to do. But oh, did you also see Megan Rapinoe and the women's soccer team yesterday? And how was it yesterday? Was she? It was like her final game and her final kick, where it was like a penalty kick and she had the opportunity to win the game, and she just absolutely blew it. Hold on, I've got the video. This is funny. Here we go. Megan Rapinoe. Here's her highlights here from this from her final game. She's the one who basically pioneered wokeism and was demanding, more pay for doing a worse job on the U.S. women's soccer team. Hold on, here we go. This is the Benny this copyright thing. That was her penalty kick right there. Okay, so this is her final. Stop playing the music. This is her final kick in her final game in the U.S. women's soccer. And here it is. Watch it. Watch this penalty kick. Not this one, but the next one. Here we go. Right there. Ooh, yikes. I got to say, that's pretty embarrassing. All right. When we get back, Oppenheimer review. We'll talk about the 3-hour long Christopher Nolan Oppenheimer movie when we get back on the Wake Up America show, wakeupamericashow.com.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Hello, my name is Kelvin. Welcome to Frenchy Bush. This is my Didi's website, and I've decided to speak to you with my real voice for the first time ever to tell you about how cool Frenchy Bush is. But I've decided that this is the perfect opportunity to share with you. Frenchy Bush is a good website. You should follow us on socials. If you like Frenchies or any kind of bulldogs, me and my new brother George are going to try to make your life more fun.
Hello, I'm George. My neck isn't really thick yet, but it will be. We are so glad you're here. Please ignore my floating eyeball. It helps me spot predators who might be approaching from the sides.
Didi made Frenchy Bullshit to review things that he uses on me and my brother to tell you if it's good or bullshit. Take this collar, for example. Didi really likes it. Didi said it's really handy because us Frenchies got thick necks. Need something really tough. People think Frenchies are little, but if you look at us from below, you can see we are really pretty buff. Beefcake, yes. Look at my creamy thighs and chest. Yes, you like that?
Big brother, please focus.
Frenchy Bullshit. Please follow us for more great content and read the Frenchy Bullshit blog for more fun and cool stuff.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Tired of spending your hard-earned money on woke corporations that don't share your pro-freedom values? Fed up with sipping liberal lattes and progressive cappuccinos? Introducing Founding Flavors from AP for Liberty Shop. Get your day started with Washington's Revolutionary Roast. As robust and principled as the man himself, this blend is the shot of energy heard round the world. Or maybe you want to taste the fervor of freedom with Adams's Patriotic Perk. It's as dynamic and balanced as the U.S. Constitution, sure to awaken your spirit of liberty. For the aficionados, we've got the Jeffersonian Java, a complex mix of flavors that speaks volumes about your refined tastes. And don't forget Betsy's Liberty Lullaby, our decaf option, crafted with the same care and dedication Betsy Ross put into our Star-Spangled Banner. This blend lets you enjoy the taste of freedom anytime without losing sleep. No woke beans here, folks. Just pure, patriotic, pro-freedom flavors brewed with love for liberty. So why compromise your principles for a cup of coffee? Stand up for your values, perk up your patriotism, and start your day the American way. Get your Founding Flavors at apforlibertyshop.com. Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. We're glad to have you here. We made it. It's Monday. Hope you're all in a good mood today. Have you tried Founding Flavors coffee yet from apforlibertyshop.com? It's absolutely delicious. I have to say, I'm kind of a coffee snob. And when we first got into the discussions, my wife and I, about starting up our own coffee brand, I thought it was going to be difficult because it's it's really hard to source good quality products and then be able to provide them to customers at a price that they actually want to buy something at. And if you're not like Amazon, or if you're not like Black Rifle Coffee, or if you're not like any of like the big brands, Folgers or something like that, it's really difficult to keep your prices low so that you can actually compete. Because, if people can go and buy coffee at the store for like $6 a bag, a lot of people are going to do that. But there are people who are willing to pay, premium prices for premium coffee if they are getting something that's better than what they usually get. And that's really the only way for people who are new to marketplaces to compete, right? If you go in there and you try and offer like the cheapest product, the best product, the cheapest price, you're going to get outflanked by the big guys, right? They've got all the market share. So the smartest strategy is to provide the highest quality possible at the best price that you can afford as a business owner. And thankfully, we found our match. Stephanie and I found an absolutely delicious coffee that we can provide to you at a price that we think is actually very competitive. Because sometimes people will go to the shop and be like, "Oh wow, that's a little bit pricier than other coffees," but that's not actually true, because if you compare us with shipping and handling fees that others charge us, we're actually a little bit lower than many of your other favorite coffee brands that are out there that you buy online. So I want to invite you today to consider switching. I never thought I was ever going to switch from Dunkin' Donuts. I'll be honest, because I really love their blend. And once you kind of zero in on something that you like, and so many coffees are just terrible. Right? Are you like me? Like, just like you can only really drink a few different types of coffee from a few different places in a few different ways. Maybe it's just me, but I like my coffee a certain way and to have a certain flavor. But honestly, I'm addicted to our founding flavors brand. Stephanie will tell you, like, we're starting to go through these bags pretty fast. So that's a good sign. I provide to you coffee that I think is delicious and that I drink on the daily basis. So if you haven't tried a bag yet, I highly recommend it. My favorite is the Benjamin Franklin Electric Elixir, but the Revolutionary Roast from George Washington is also really popular, as well as Adams's Patriotic Perk and Jeffersonian Java, which is my second favorite of all of those. That's the light roast. So definitely check that out over at apforlibertyshop.com. All right, let's get to the news. Oppenheimer has raked in over $500 million on the same day that its Barbenheimer counterpart reached $1 billion in box office revenue, $552 million. That makes Christopher Nolan's epic the most successful World War II film ever at the box office. It's also become the highest grossing rated R movie this year. And it's the fastest that an R-rated film from Universal has grossed $200 million in the United States. So, the film in Christopher Nolan's hands, right? It was, I don't know if anybody else could have done this movie the way that Christopher Nolan did, and there's a lot that's praiseworthy in Christopher Nolan's depiction of Robert Oppenheimer. But I also think that there's room for criticism here. Since we're being nitpicky, we're definitely going to get there, right? So this movie features Cillian Murphy as the kind of the title inspiring Manhattan Project physicist, and it's 3 hours long. And I will say that I was concerned that I was going to have to run to the bathroom, in and out, get up and sit down, but the movie was compelling enough to keep our attention for the entire 3 hours. And despite the fact that Stephanie and I had giant ices, one blue and one red, that we shared, and some popcorn, we didn't actually have to get up to the bathroom, go to the bathroom at all, even though a lot of the old people who were in the theater with us did. And the old lady who was sitting next to Stephanie was passed out and was snoring. Um, it's a biopic, right? It's which typically don't always do amazing at the box office, right? But Bohemian Rhapsody, Passion of the Christ, American Sniper, those are films that they sort of modeled themselves. This movie modeled itself after and became a very successful movie. In becoming the most successful World War II on the silver screen, it also features Florence Pugh and Robert Downey Jr. in it, which was really interesting to see Robert Downey Jr. as kind of an old man. Fascinating, right? It overtook Dunkirk, which made $527 million, Saving Private Ryan, which made $482 million, and Pearl Harbor, which was definitely a stinker in my mind, which made $449 million, right? So it's kind of interesting to see how they Oppenheimer and Barbie movies intertwined and became Barbenheimer over the summer. But I will say this: my problem with the Oppenheimer movie, some of these things are nitpicking, and other things are. Here's what Stephanie said to me yesterday. I'll just go ahead and get right into the ideology here because and I try not to lead Steffi, right? Or like in terms of like ideology because we're both libertarians, right? And I really like when my wife comes to me with things that I was thinking in order for us and starts this discussion that we have and of course since we're both libertarians we agree on quite a bit, but in order for me to ensure that I'm not always confirming my biases or sort of projecting my views on her, I like to just not bring certain things up that I think or feel to see if she'll bring them up first, just for me to make sure that 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 I didn't see something that wasn't there. And perfect example of this was yesterday after the film. I didn't immediately launch into the discussion about the communist ties that Oppenheimer had. But I will say that, of course, a big part of the movie is centered around the attempt by Oppenheimer to try and pr- keep his security clearance in light of the fact that he had ties to prominent communists. His wife was a member of the Communist Party. His brother was a member of the Communist Party. And of course, he paid money to not Italian, but Spanish communists during the Spanish Civil War to try and help fight against the fascists of Spain. I don't want to get too much in the nitty gritty details, but a big part of the movie is going back and forth with flashbacks to the time where Oppenheimer is working on the bomb, where Oppenheimer in the future, in this scenario, is fighting to keep his security clearance with the beginning of the Red Scare and the Cold War, and then his early days as a young man as a professor in college when he ostensibly tried to poison his professor, which showed that he did suffer from some mental instability. But they never really explore that much in the film. You can sort of see some instability in Oppenheimer, which a scene with Harry Truman, played by the uh, excellent Gary Sinise, by the way, um, is shows that Harry Truman, I think rightly, calls out Oppenheimer for being a bit of a nutso to some degree. And of course, there is a fine line between genius and between madness, which I think Cillian Murphy, the actor, really shows quite well. But I waited to see if Stephanie, my wife, would bring up to me the idea of the message being sent through this movie. Now, I don't know what Christopher Nolan's political leanings are, but I do know that Hollywood leans red these days, and it seems as if the leftist, socialist, Marxist message, communist message, manages to find its way into pretty much everything that we have. Barbie is a perfect example of this, where you have Marxist feminism on the march, right? And postmodern feminism, which is, closely tied to Marxist feminism, made its way through, basically informed the entire Greta Gerwig Barbie movie. But I wanted to see if my wife would, I wanted to see if Stephanie would bring it up to me and start a discussion over that. And she did. Sure enough, she did. Out of the blue, she just goes, I didn't used to see in movies, when we would go to movies, I didn't used to feel as if I was being preached to, or if there wasn't either subtly or not so subtly a message being sent to us to one, demonize capitalism, which she didn't say in so many words, but if I'm boiling down her analysis of this, it truly was to an extent. Um, but a glorification of Marxism and a sort of victimization of them, an attempt to paint the communists traitors in our government, right, of which there were many spies and saboteurs, some of whom Joseph McCarthy, who we all know, Joe McCarthy, actually did play a part in rooting out and determining, like Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, and a list of others that I will get into here in just a moment. But she brought up the fact, Stephanie, my wife, brought up the fact that it seems to be as if in any movie that we watch these days, that Hollywood is mostly subtly, but sometimes not, promoting this left-wing message, trying to paint leftists and Marxists and spies and traitors and communists inside the American government who were stealing American nuclear secrets and providing them to the Soviets, who after World War II ostensibly became our enemies, providing these secrets of American nuclear technology to the Soviets, right? Trying to paint them as if they were victims. I mean, the movie is rated R, I think, in large part not just due to the language, but because of the gratuitous nudity which occurs throughout the film, which, as a libertarian, doesn't bother me. But there's this character that Robert Oppenheimer has an affair with, who is this Marxist woman that he has, these dalliances with, but she in no way does she advance the plot. She's just supposed to be this sexy, mysterious communist woman that he has this relationship with, but there's never any connection between who she is or how she inspired Oppenheimer in any way, or how she, caused anything related to the Trinity Project, which was the project to actually test the bomb the very first time before they used it on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It Movie makers are always going to try and insert a love story into anything, right? It's happening, with I learned this last week when we were doing our Battle of Athens documentary. When people come in to talk about making movies about the Battle of Athens, people are always trying to find like a love story or a female angle in this to make it more marketable in order to get it out to wider audiences. So I think what's likely happened is that they interjected this Marxist woman relationship that Oppenheimer had in order to make this movie more marketable, and of course to help paint the Marxist females in a brighter light, and to make them look like victims and their tortured souls and their struggle against capitalism. What's fascinating too is that the movie does focus on communists in our government to a large extent. I mean, it has, throughout the entire film is sprinkled this idea of Robert Oppenheimer being tangentially related to communists within the government, which he was. He absolutely was. And while he never joined the Communist Party himself, he had many ties to the labor movement and was initially beginning to start to organize professors, where he was building the bomb to try and create a labor union himself. But he backed off on that in order for him to create the bomb, and sort of lost in all of this discussion about labor roles and rights and communists who are these poor innocent victims, even though they're stealing America and attempting to steal American nuclear secrets and committing treason against the United States. Oh, they're victims, they will. There is the actual story that they didn't focus on as much, which two major things that they didn't focus on in the film, lots of major things that they didn't focus on in this film, which was one, the reasons why Oppenheimer decided to continue to build the bomb despite his misgivings, which they did go through probably two or three times in the movie. Two, they don't focus, I mean, at all on the actual bombings on Hiroshima or Nagasaki. It is mentioned in the film many times, but they show the Trinity blast, the creation of the bomb. There's a lot of scientific discussion, but they never really sort of get into the debate, which I think is a huge lost opportunity in this movie. They don't actually get into the debate that Oppenheimer and others had about the morality of the use of the bomb, how it should be used, the way that the diplomatic negotiations that were ongoing between the United States, the Potsdam Conference is mentioned, but they don't actually go there to sort of see why Truman made a decision that he would demand that the Japanese would should engage in unconditional surrender, right? So discussions were held about offering Japan conditional separation terms, and that option provided assurances regarding the preservation of the Japan's emperor, right? The goal was supposed to be to give Japan an honorable way to end the war while avoiding an all-out invasion. Now, some of these scientists, like Oppenheimer and others, were suggesting that they conduct a public demonstration of the atomic bomb's power to Japan or to or a neutral country. The idea was to show the devastating effects of the bomb and prompt Japanese surrender without actually using it on a populated city. So this is the approach that was championed by scientists like Oppenheimer and others, and this was a topic of discussion among the Manhattan Project scientists. And this would have been a fascinating bit of history for people to examine, because you cannot have a discussion about the morality of the use of nuclear weapons without the context of how they were talking about and what they were saying in regards to the use of the nuclear weapon. Because ultimately, the reason why they decided to actually use the weapon on a populated city was the least worst of all of the options that they had to consider. And of course, they weren't entirely unified in their decision. The military leaders and the scientists weren't entirely unified. But the film only spends about a minute in focusing on this very crucial part of history, which would encourage you to spend some time and research the debates that went on with Oppenheimer and the military leadership, the brass, to determine about where to use the bomb, why to use the bomb, how to use the bomb effectively. And those debates and negotiations, I think, really it's a huge missed opportunity for the filmmaker to provide Americans with some much needed context about a discussion that should inform our politics today, but unfortunately doesn't. Because unfortunately, what you see is two side of things. One is you see the people who just buy the pro-America line, hooks, line, and sinker, without the context or the decision or the powerful understandings that are required in order to justify the use of the bomb, which I do agree with, but I do think need like a committed sense of knowledge and understanding and duty before you would wield such an awesome power. I did run for president of the United States, after all, ostensibly, right? In order for me to take that power into my own hands as an individual, right? It's something that considered, and only in the final 2 weeks of the campaign, when things got a little weird and seemed as if like I might actually become the nominee for just a brief moment. Um, but in that time, I'm considering to myself what awesome power you would take into your hands and what responsibility, comes with it, right? This sort of Damocles, which is above all of our heads. I think Oppenheimer his character, Cillian Murphy, demonstrated that through his acting, the sort of the power and the responsibility that was above Oppenheimer's head, but never really vocalized it to a large extent, right? Because mostly what was being vocalized, of what we could hear and understand, because I will say, from a technical problem perspective, it was really hard to hear and understand what a lot of the actors were saying. And I know that this is a creative choice by the director. He doesn't like to do voiceover work afterwards. He likes to capture the actor's voice in the scene while they're acting it, and then use that audio instead of, if you can't hear it later on when the editor is in the editing room, they'll say, okay, we need to get voiceover of Robert Downey Jr. saying this because we can't actually understand him. We needed subtitles, right? And I'm old, but I'm not that old, right? And I can still hear pretty well. We could not understand what a lot of the actors were saying, simply because the voiceover work wasn't there. So that's one of the big problems with Oppenheimer as well. But I really dislike the disingenuous approach taken by mostly anarchists and pacifists in regards to the use of the nuclear weapon, because I'm someone who I have been in the libertarian movement for 15 years now, right? And I've met tens of thousands of libertarians in my cross-country travels, in my presidential campaign, my US Senate campaign, working at think tanks. I've met libertarians around the world. I've worked with, I'm working on a project right now with libertarians in South America that's coming out next year. I just did a Hollywood movie, actually, with a libertarian who contacted me, was a supporter of my campaign. And so I've worked with libertarians in all aspects. I've been members of, anarcho-capitalist clubs in New York City. And so I've been a street activist, right? I was at Occupy Wall Street, right? With a lot of my friends, covering that while I was during my Ron Paul days, right? And I've run for president of the United States. So when it comes to politics, I've basically operated at every level and operated with libertarians at every level. And I will say this, that the sad reality is that very few libertarians actually have done their homework on the atomic bomb, other than to believe hook, line, and sinker the work of revisionist historians of the liberty movement, of many of whom I have read, and some of whom their work I do respect. but who paint a very different picture of the use of the nuclear bomb than is what actually happened. And many of them are lies. Uh, we everybody who is a part of an ideology will see this. If you've ever been a part of any ideological group at all whatsoever, conservative, libertarian, liberal, right, you'll find that there are orthodox doctrinaires, and orthodox doctrinaires, they believe what they believe because of faith, not because of evidence, right? They didn't come to their beliefs in libertarianism or conservatism or liberalism or leftism or Antifa or whatever. They didn't come to their belief system because they didn't logic themselves into these positions, right? They have accepted these things as a right of faith, right? And because of they respect the person or the speaker who said it. So it becomes an argument from authority. Well, if Ron Paul said it, it must be true. If Cornel West says it, then it must be true, right? Or name any person who has a cult following in the United States, and you will find cultists, people who believe what they say, what the cult leader says, regardless of the veracity of these claims. And I will say that there have been times over the years when speaking out against these libertarian lies have been detrimental to my career. I am a libertarian after all, and my life and my career would be much more profitable if I absolutely never called out people in my peer group for spreading lies. One of the biggest lies surrounding the use of the atomic bomb, spread by libertarians and leftists alike, right? It started as a leftist lie, but was adopted by many libertarians, is that Harry S. Truman decided to use the bomb against Hiroshima directly targeting civilians on purpose. That is one of the biggest lies spread by leftists, left-wingers, anarchists, left libertarians, anyone who opposes the use of the bomb in total will spread this lie and say that Harry S. Truman did it purposely to attack civilians, which is absolutely not true at all. And if you read the debates that they glossed over, skimmed over in the Oppenheimer, in the history of Robert Oppenheimer, you'll find that there were several reasons why they chose Hiroshima, and none of them had to do with attacking civilians directly, not at all. And frankly, I don't think that we do ourselves any favor as liberty lovers in spreading lies to justify our philosophy. Our philosophy, the ideas of liberty, are self-evident, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident. We don't have to accept libertarian principles as a matter of faith, because we can arrive at all of these conclusions of natural law, individual liberty, economic freedom, and personal liberty as a result of logic and reason. Okay. Time to move on. Liz Mair is coming up next. She wants to talk to us about how 7-year-olds are getting gender-affirming care from the United Kingdom's National Health Service. She also has a few words to say about Megan Rapinoe of the U.S. women's soccer team over the weekend. We'll talk to her when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupamericashow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupamericashow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
George. Thank you for watching the Wake Up America show with my dad. Today, I'd like to share with you 3 reasons why you should visit Dad's online store at apforlibertyshop.com. Number 1. You can get exclusive freedom-loving merch designed by AP himself or me mum, Steffi. Liberty Laura has made some designs as well, and blimey, they are great! Number 2. Most of these products are so wicked that they aren't even allowed to be advertised on Facebook or Instagram. Modern machine guns and a proper keychain. Plus, our Grover Cleveland t-shirt is so spicy apparently that leftists on Facebook specifically banned it from appearing on the website. Number 3. You're supporting liberty lovers just like you. Spend your money where you earn it, and you help me pups build a community that supports what you believe. Bloody hell! This commercial is running too long. Gotta run. Bye now. Don't forget to visit apforlibertyshop.com. That's apforlibertyshop.com.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. All right, Oppenheimer rant is over. It's time for us to rant about something else. If you're enjoying the content this morning, don't forget to click like and subscribe to the channel if it's your first time here. We fight for economic freedom and personal liberty. And if you enjoy the content, we do bring this show every Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central. So you get 2 hours of live Liberty News talk to start your day. Don't forget also to check out our Founding Flavors coffee. I saw our buddy Richard got himself a couple of bags of coffee this morning. Thank you very much, Richard. We appreciate that. You can get your own delightful revolutionary roasts over at apforlibertyshop.com. All right. Well, what happens in the UK? Will it eventually come to the United States? A lot of American conservatives certainly think so. Well, if that's true, we certainly need to keep an eye on this next story. The United Kingdom's National Health Service, that is their socialized medicine service, is now offering gender-affirming care to children as young as 7 years old. Joining us now to discuss is a veteran of U.S. political campaigns. She's a libertarian conservative just like myself. Her name is Liz Mair, and she's joining us live right now. Good morning, Liz. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm also coming to you from London, so I'm on the ground, and I'm British and American, so I can offer lots of different perspectives here.
But you don't have a London accent. There's no Cockney over there. Mr. Todd? What's the
No, 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 no. Unfortunately, actually, when I was small, when I learned to speak, I actually learned to speak here. And I actually sounded pretty much the same as the Queen in the second season. And then when I moved back to America, nobody knew what I was talking about. So I rid myself of it. It does come back a bit when I'm here, but I'm going to try to sound American so everybody can understand what I'm talking about here and not do, too much of that. Yeah.
You also have an opinion on Megan Rapinoe. We're going to talk about her in just a minute from the
I have
women's
many
soccer
opinions
team.
on all matter of things involving football or soccer, as I should put it here.
All right,
In fact,
Liz,
I'm even wearing my hat, so that's an opinion right there.
Oh, there it is. All right, you're still making your statement. So
Yes.
let's start with this story that you sent to me about the National Health Service. 7 years
Yeah.
old, Liz?
Well, so what's interesting about this story is that I first saw this in a daily newsletter that I get from the Daily Telegraph, which is also sort of known as the Daily Tory Graph here. So it's the conservative leaning paper. And the way that they put it was exactly as you put it. Now, what's interesting is when I dug into this a little bit, this is actually them increasing the age at which they're going to provide care. So actually viewed through the lens of a lot of conservatives, both here and in the US, this is an improvement. But I think one thing that's interesting to consider about this is, of course, the big difference that you have between the US and the UK regarding all matters of healthcare is here, pretty much you can go private, but pretty much the default is everything is taxpayer funded and it is a socialized system. Whereas in the US, if you have a hospital doing this, it's not necessarily going to be on the taxpayer dime. Obviously, hospitals do get subsidies. Obviously, you do have some people who are on Medicaid. You do have some people who are getting forms of charitable care, which does involve taxpayer money that's been given to the hospital being diverted. But here, it's pretty straight up. And so that's one of the reasons that I think this has become quite as controversial as it has in the UK. In the US, it's also controversial, but it's a different degree and a different sort of perspective.
How do people, like just the average British citizen, feel about that?
Yeah, I think opinions really divided on it here too. I mean, definitely I see as I've been in the country, I mean, I come back here for like a month every year, at least a month, and then a few business trips. I think generally when you're looking at London, of course, and then our family's from Scotland. So when we're back in Scotland, I think in general, people are pretty trans friendly, definitely much more in line with, I would say, where pretty much the far left is in the US on things. But that's not necessarily true of obviously the entirety of the population. And of course, there are a lot of nuances within those positions anyway. I mean, I think, you've said at some point that, if you had somebody who, was a transgender woman who was running for president, but championing all the same positions as Senator Rand Paul, you infinitely prefer that to somebody who was a traditional whatever, but who was championing the policies of Joe Biden, right? I mean, same. So you can definitely find those variations out there too. But there have been a lot of concerns, certainly here, with a lot of the gender-related treatment that has been done with kids. A lot of concerns, obviously, as I say, do center on the fact that that's entirely taxpayer funded. And so we're starting to see a lot of changes in the way that the UK is handling it. And it'll be interesting to see how that affects the US political debate.
Yeah, no kidding. If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. We're glad to have you watching us today. Make sure you click like and subscribe to the channel if it's your first time here today so that we can continue to grow. So taxpayer funded obviously raises my libertarian hackles, but Liz, on a visceral level, what's being done to children just strikes at the heart of consent culture that libertarians like you and I absolutely believe, because I don't think children can consent to that kind of a transformative procedure, not just consent to the mutilation itself, but even consent to the hormones that would block their puberty. It strikes me as an abomination.
Well, I think there are a couple of issues here. One thing is when you talk about gender affirming treatment, what are we talking about? Are we talking about somebody going to the psychiatrist once a week and the psychiatrist saying, it's okay to, use a different name. It's okay to dress differently. Like, you should feel good about yourself. And if you proceed down that route, that's fine. Like, have self-confidence, feel good about things. That's one thing. Obviously, there are concerns that have been raised about effects on puberty blockers on things like bone density. Now, I would argue if you're in a taxpayer funded system like here, that's one reason why you should be very concerned about that, because if what people are saying, skeptics of hormone or like sort of puberty blocking treatments, if what skeptics of those are saying in terms of future effects on bone density, wow, you could end up with some pretty massive taxpayer costs that are going to be associated with a bunch of people walking around with osteoporosis when they're 16 or 24 or 44 or whatever it is, right? So I think that's again a different thing. But then when you're talking about actual full-on surgery, that's yet another thing. And you have, I think, different situations in terms of the patients. When we say child, obviously a child at 7, I think is very different to a child at 10, to a child at 16, to a child who is 17 and 5 days off of turning 18, right? So it's a pretty expansive category. And I think that's one of the things that's really difficult about dealing with this issue is you're talking about what you're doing with minors. And that's actually an extremely broad category. I mean, my son is 9 and he's pretty mature for a 9-year-old. Compare him even to his 9-year-old friends, and you're looking at massive differences. So I think that's one of the real questions for policymakers is how do you even address this? Because you're just dealing with huge amounts of complexity, real differences between kids. I have a friend from school who transitioned, frankly, we never even knew he was a she. None of us could figure out who this mysterious person with a girl's name was until finally they put photos up on the wall and we were like, okay, interesting, didn't know. That stuck. But I also know 2 kids who started transitioning and detransitioned. And so part of the issue here, I think, is there obviously is a history of having transgender people within society, but not as many as we have now. And so I just don't even know if anybody really has the relevant data set to fully figure out what's going on here. But it's very complicated.
If you had to guess, Liz, what do you think is going on here? Because everybody who watches my show knows how I feel about it, but what do you think is going on?
I think like most things that pop up and seem to suddenly become a big explosive topic in public debate, I think probably we're looking at a multitude of factors. I think, in this country, people were more familiar with the idea of changing one's gender and gender reassignment because famously you had, I believe it was a Bond girl. I want to say she was in one of the Roger Moore films. You'll have to Google this. But I believe she was born with a chromosomal disorder that possibly, I hope I'm not misstating this, I might be, but possibly meant that instead of being XX or XY, it was like XXYX. There was something really strange going on there. And so that is somebody who had male put on the birth certificate, but that's not where that person ended up. And ultimately, she's a Bond girl. I mean, nobody's going to look at a Bond girl and go, that's a dude, right? So I mean, I don't know, you look at a situation like that, maybe it's a lot easier for people to say, okay, cool. As soon as that person turns 18, get all the surgery you want, change everything that you want to on all your paperwork. Everybody gets that. Everybody's on board with that. I think that's very different to the situation of one of my friends whose daughter got hit by pretty harsh lockdowns, was spending a ridiculous amount of time on social media, seemed to then start transitioning. And then suddenly it's like, I think we got 12 months on from that. And she is now still a she and is just a tomboy. It just turns out that in the social setup at her school, from what I can ascertain, it sounds like the girls are really girly and she's the odd duck out.
But Liz, I want to latch on to what you said there and towards like the tomboy. Like we used to have tomboys, right? And it just seems. Do you think that I'm being uncharitable when I say that I think what's happening here is that there's an agenda of people who have got gender degrees, right? That there's an agenda on behalf of left-wing academia to try and advance their gender ideology, and that they are using these children as experiments to try and act out their fantasies, their leftist fantasies in the real world by finding victims like women, like young women, girls, who act, more tomboyish, and to try and convince them to transition using social media and using pop culture to try and sort of brainwash these kids. Am I being uncharitable in that?
Well, I think you certainly have seen things that would suggest that that's happening, right? I don't think that that's something where most of the audience is going to go, wow, I've never seen anything on social media that would suggest that nobody in the world is doing that, right? But, I've also heard from people that you sometimes have had data that suggests that in very culturally conservative American communities, where people really do want their kids to adhere to really stringent traditional gender roles, you start seeing higher populations of people who identify as transgender also. And I do wonder how much of that occurs because you've got a girl who wants to be a construction worker and play American football, and she does not want to have anything to do with Barbie, and she doesn't care about doing her hair or makeup or nails, and that just doesn't fit. So, I think there's a very real population out there who are transgender, and I think that's totally fine, and we should be charitable and equitable and be nice to people. And I think that, like I say, in the case of the person that I met at school, the friend that I have from school, it would never occur to me to have ever said she or her, because that's just that's never who that person has been, right? But I'm also concerned that it would be a real shame, I think, if society started in pigeonholing people so narrowly into gender roles that, I'm sitting here wearing an Arsenal cap. I mean, I love football, soccer in America. My whole family does. And I'm not a very girly girl. I mean, okay, I've got makeup on, whatever, but I'm not a very girly girl. I think it would kind of suck if somebody who's like the junior version of Liz, who's 3 years old now, people are like, oh, that actually makes you a boy. I don't think that makes you a boy. I also think that there are a lot of transgender advocates who would say, no, that doesn't make you a boy. And that's a misapprehension that people have when they offer criticisms of people being as accepting as we are of the transgender population. So I don't know. I think there's just a whole lot going on here. And I know saying I don't know is a very unpopular answer to offer in debate.
It's definitely not popular at all.
I'm just not sure that we do know. I'm just not sure that we do. I feel like in certain select instances, you can evaluate individual cases and say, yeah, I have a pretty good idea what's going on here. But as far as a general social trend, ask me again in 18 months. I guess that's kind of where I am on it.
Okay, all right. Well, it's interesting. You did bring up soccer, though, and I know you wanted to chime in on the controversy involving Megan Rapinoe over the weekend with the end of her career. And I have to say, a lot of people were rubbing her face in the dirt because she is the epitome of woke here in the United States, right? She's the one who advances the whole nonsense in regards to women not getting equal pay with men, which I know is a complete economic fallacy. But you wanted to say something specifically about the difficulty of the shots that she was setting up for her final shot.
Yeah, so I have not been a big fan of hers. Mostly the reason I haven't been a big fan of hers is I think that she's presented herself and the team that she has led as being on a par with the team that we used to see with Hope Solo and Abby Wambach and Brandi Chastain. And personally, as a football fan, I don't think that's an accurate comparison. I just don't think it's an accurate comparison. And I do think, she got out over her skis and maybe jinxed herself a little bit. I don't think failing to sing the national anthem, I don't think there's some mystical thing out there that means if you don't sing the national anthem, you're going to miss a penalty, right? I mean, if that's the case, wow, I just, convince everybody on the opposing team of my son to never sing the national anthem because he's the goalkeeper, right? But I will say, yeah, I mean, people say pride comes before a fall. And I think that she did get a little bit out over her skis in terms of championing how good this team supposedly was. And it turned out that it wasn't. It turned out that she wasn't. With that being said, there are also comments that I've seen today that, I think there was an op-ed in the Miami Herald that suggested that her missing that penalty was like showing up at a spelling bee and not being able to spell cat. And as somebody who's played striker, albeit not well, and definitely would never be getting anywhere near a national team, but also as a mother of a goalkeeper who actually has a pretty strong record for a 9-year-old. Honestly, I do think it's worth noting that penalties are not easy to take. My child as a goalkeeper, as a 9-year-old, has actually never let a penalty in, never. So anybody who thinks that that's the equivalent of showing up at a spelling bee and spelling the word cat, please go ahead and take a shot on my son and see what happens. I'm not saying that he's the next Tim Howard, though that would be super cool. But, again, like that's another comparison. Go back and watch that match. I think it was in 2014 between the USA and Belgium. I think Tim Howard saved something like 15 direct shots on goal. That was in game time, not necessarily just looking at penalties. But penalties are not easy. It is not a guarantee that you are going to score. Obviously, you do hope that your biggest star on the team is not going to shoot it over the crossbar or into the crossbar.
I was going to say, they may not be easy, but you would think that they would not shoot it entirely over the
I
goal
would also
itself.
say, though, for those who want to be critical of Megan Rapinoe on that, please go pull video of what Harry Kane did in the match with France in the last World Cup. Also, go ahead and go to my Twitter at Liz Mair, LIZMAIR. Sorry, not .com, just at Liz Mair, because I'm going to tweet a picture of the face that was on Kylian Mbappe, French striker, when Harry Kane missed his penalty. Because honestly, the way he hit that, and he's supposed to be England's best goal scorer, the way he hit that, he must have thought that goal was about 3 stories high. I mean, it was really phenomenal.
Here
So
comes the
everybody
apology.
trashing Megan Rapinoe today, just bear in mind she botched it, but she did it so much better than Harry Kane, who's like supposed to be one of the best scorers. So,
Man, that is some
that's
apology.
my nuanced view.
There are Christian apologists and there are U.S. Women's World Cup soccer apologists. Liz Mair, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before?
No, just nobody be a Harry Kane apologist. I'm an Arsenal supporter, as everybody can see. He plays for Spurs. We have no time for that. He used to play for us when we were on the youth team. We released him, and when I saw that penalty, I was like, "That's why. That's why."
That's Liz Mair right there. She is a veteran of U.S. campaigns, a libertarian conservative living in London right now, and she is joining us live. We appreciate you, Liz. You can follow you at Liz Mair over on Twitter. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks so much.
Thanks very much. What do you think of Liz Mair? You can text the show today at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. Got to say thank you and a cheers to JGJ. Appreciate the super chat, my man. He says, an early show gift since both Wake Up America and I share the same birthday week. Oh boy, birthday week's coming up, brother. Thank you, JG. We appreciate you very much. All right, when we get back, what are we going to talk about? I have no idea. What's the next on the show? Oh, military tax-funded transitions. Oh, God. And then we've got Jon Miltimore at 8:30 to talk about the writer's strike when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. It was 1946. A battle was fought, not overseas, but right here on American soil. The Battle of Athens, an intense struggle against election fraud and for the rights promised by our founding fathers. Driven by the Second Amendment, ordinary citizens stood tall and fought back. Help us expose this momentous battle of integrity and bravery. Your support can make a difference. Visit givesendgo.com/bleedamerican and pledge your support, because we believe in the power of truth, the strength of unity, and the spirit of we the people. Let us not forget, we bleed American.
Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian. And we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit apforlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Can do all these things and women can't, and like men have to protect women. And
you think the woman should protect the men?
I think that they can protect each other. I know plenty of women that are stronger than me.
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm just saying.
Okay, this video has a lot, and I hope that I don't get it taken down. Good morning, I'm Austin, because of the music. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm Austin Peterson. We're glad to have you here on the show. Make sure that you click like and subscribe to the channel if it's your first time watching the content today and you enjoy it. We are live every Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time on the Wake Up America show. So make sure you subscribe so we can see ya. See you later. All right, this video is hilarious. Okay, so you probably missed it just because he's a liberal who's saying a bunch of stupid crap. It's a good question, I think, that the interviewer is asking, even though it's a little bit of a troll. Do you think that the women should protect the men? It's obviously ridiculous, but a lot of people would miss the fact that the guy is holding a spatula. You can see his microphone. He's got a spatula. Might be the funniest part of this video, but it's a funny video.
That men can do all these things and women can't, and like men have to protect women. And
you think the woman should protect the men?
I think that they can protect each other. I know plenty of women that are stronger than me.
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm just saying. Okay.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? I mean, like, they're just the lengths that the left will go to justify their ideology. It just cracks me up. Speaking of taxpayer-funded surgeries, with our friend Liz Mair in the last segment, let's take a look back across the pond and see what's happening here in the United States.
This is going to be a bit of a longer video. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Evan. I'm a transgender man in the United States military, specifically the Air Force, but I don't think that's too important. I am pre-op, pre-T, but not for long. Let me explain. So, in the Air Force, right, if you're a trans member wanting to transition...
By the way, if you're watching this video later and you're wondering why it is that part of this is muted or doesn't exist, it's because of the stupid music, like Maroon 5 in the background. Sorry, not my fault.
You meet with your mental health provider, and they put together like a package, a bunch of paperwork to send you to Texas. Now, why Texas? Yeah, I'm sure you guys have all seen the bills that have been proposed. Texas doesn't seem the most friendly for, transgender individuals. However, in San Antonio, there's a base with a really, really nice clinic on it, and that's where the transgender headquarters are called. It's called THEMU. It's an acronym. So basically what you do is you do a TDY. That means temporary duty. So they send you from your current duty station to Texas to have a bunch of appointments. About this is back in May when I had my initial meeting with my mental health provider, they said that it was medically necessary for me to transition. Basically, I got diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and they're like, "Yep, this needs to happen." I was kind of
gender dysphoria. If you're diagnosed with gender dysphoria, how can somebody that's a mental illness? Like, gender dysphoria is not the kind of thing that you don't treat gender dysphoria with surgery. If somebody comes in and has gender dysphoria and an eating disorder, do you prescribe liposuction?
A long introduction, but now I'm finally here, and the appointments they go over, we have appointments with like an endocrinologist, we have appointments with nutrition, we have appointments with surgeons, with everybody, basically just like giving us a ton of information. What they do is put together a treatment plan, right? So it's basically like, this is when this individual is going to start hormones, this is when they're going to get top surgery. Like, they just give like ballpark, right? Ballpark estimates. Now, luckily, the people that work in this clinic are extremely good. They are so respectful,
funded.
They love what they do, and
this is because we're so desperate to get people into the US military. That's why they're doing this, because there are so few people that want to join this woke military that the woke military is becoming even more woke. Love to hear your thoughts on this one. I'm going to go get Jon Miltimore. I want to talk to him about the writers' strike and the current state of Hollywood, California. I saw this weekend the Oppenheimer movie. Had a lot of complaints. He saw Megalodon 2, apparently. I think he probably was the winner. We'll talk about that with John when we get back. And I promise I won't be gone long, so don't leave. We'll be back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Good morning to the Cantina crew. This is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. And I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back. Get out of my pocket.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupamericashow.com. Make sure that you click like and subscribe to the channel. If it's your first time here, we're grateful to have all of our new friends. The Wake Up America Show comes to you every Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. And if you click like, that helps us to support the spreading the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. Well, the Writers Guild and the AMPTP failed to reach an agreement to resume contract negotiations. Their inability to agree on terms for returning to the bargaining table comes after the much-anticipated meeting to discuss a possible resumption of talks. The writers of Hollywood are still on strike. Here's a little sample of the type of writing that we might be missing. Take a listen.
We've decoded the intel from the First Order spy, and it confirms the worst. Somehow Palpatine returned.
Wait, do we believe this?
It cannot be. The Emperor is dead.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
Secrets, science, cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew. It confirms the worst. Somehow Palpatine returned. Bum, 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 bum. All right, so a very terrible example of Hollywood screenwriting, but, could we do any better? Who knows? Joining us now to discuss is a writer himself, editor-at-large at the Foundation for Economic Education, Jon Miltimore, here for his weekly segment. Good morning, John.
Good morning, AP. How's it going?
Good. I saw Oppenheimer over the weekend. You saw Meg 2. But I got to say, after 3 hours of not being able to understand what the actors were saying and a lot of focus on some communist chick who ended up offing herself, I have to say, you might have gotten the better of the two.
Really? Okay. No, that's good to hear. Like, I wanted to go to Oppenheimer. My kids are rather insistent. They said, we got to see the Meg 2. They watched the first one a couple months ago and decided they want to see this. If you saw the first Meg, you probably don't need to see this one because it's very similar. The body count's a little bit higher. It might be a little funnier. Jason Statham looks the same and does the same, no spoilers, but yeah, it was okay. It was exactly what I thought I'd get about it's about a 5 or a 6, solid popcorn movie on a rainy Sunday.
Okay, well, we ate a lot of popcorn, but I wouldn't say Oppenheimer was a popcorn movie, but I was just, I don't try and impress my opinions on my wife. I like to sit back and see if she thinks the same thing I think and so I wait for her to bring things up. And in this movie, she was like, I don't think Hollywood films used to be like this. She's like, but whenever I watch movies, it's pretty obvious that the message they're trying to get across, because the movie paints the Marxists and the communists and the leftists and the socialists in this very sympathetic light, as if they're all, just these helpless victims of the evil, tyrannical federal government that's just using them so that they can commit mass murder against civilians in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which they totally gloss over in this movie, by the way. It's all focused on the Trinity test and the trepidation which these scientists felt about what they were creating and how it would be used. But then when they actually get to the moment that it's used in the movie, it just kind of glosses over it and you hear a radio broadcast about it happening. So anyways, we have lots of complaints about this movie, but most of the
I got one question though.
Yeah.
It was something we talked about this weekend. I asked a friend if he had seen the movie, he had not. So we talked about Oppenheimer a little bit. Neither one of us are much of a fan of Oppenheimer as a man. Again, he's a commie, but so does he come off as a hero, or is he kind of an anti-hero?
They portray him as a patriot, that he was committed to his country and that he was never disloyal, although he did have many communist associations and sympathies and did help to fund Spanish communists during the Spanish Civil War, which is a lesser understood part of world history, the Spanish Civil War. But I have to say, it did feel as if when we could understand what they were saying, just because unfortunately the way Christopher Nolan films his movies, he doesn't go back and like do voiceovers in order to ensure that what you hear, you can actually hear all the actors. You can only hear it from their performance, in which case sometimes it like falls off. But Stephanie brought it up, was like, there definitely was a message there, and it was trying to paint the communists who were literally committing treason against the United States, stealing American nuclear secrets and giving them to the Soviets, right, as if they were sympathetic or victims from the US federal government, right? So the message was there, of course, not quite hit you over the head as hard as Barbie was, but it's there. And here's the thing, John. Stephanie and I were talking about this. We watched a movie the other day that was, I can't remember what it was, but it was really entertaining. It was very low budget, very funny, good actors, very, just a great script. And we were just remarking on the fact that it didn't take millions of dollars or billions of dollars to make a movie that was actually funny, because if the writing is good, that's really all you need. But the writers are striking, and the writing's not good, John.
No, it's not. It's one of these things. I hadn't looked at the strike too much, coming into this. I've been asked, like, you can do an article on it, and I said it doesn't jazz me that much, but it is interesting. And if you talk to people, feel very passionate about this strike. But I don't think most people could probably have a clue, about what the strike's about. But you can go and you can find it all on the WGA website, and all the terms are laid out, what their demands are, what the studios have countered with, or what they've given into. Most of it's just money, right? Like, so let's just start there. And there were certain percentages already negotiated years ago. Well, now they want a little bit more. And some of the studios like, okay, and other ones like, no, you can't have those minimums. We're fighting over that. And then there's so that component, I haven't heard much about that, right? Like, this is just an old fashioned, we're haggling over money. We've heard a lot more about things like AI, barely mentioned in here. But if you look, this is what strikes me about this. If you look at every other corporation and, like companies, like people I know are going through this now, like developers, they're all bringing AI into their workflow. Okay. They're integrating this, or they're exploring how they can use it. The writers are saying, no, you can't have any. They're just, it's a red line. They're saying we can't use any of this in the process. And that is the nature of unions, right? Like I'm not saying like unions in every scenario are all bad. Like, I think it makes sense, you collectively bargaining for certain things at certain times. It does make sense for whether you're a players union to try to maximize your own benefits. The problem is, oftentimes as unions grow larger, their goals are running against productivity and efficiency. And this is why over time you see unions can be very corrosive to companies, or worse, now as we see public sector unions coming forward, they can just rake tax dollars for more and more. Their job, because they're trying to serve workers, they're hostile to things like efficiency and productivity, things that are going to improve. And I think that's one of the things people need to understand about unions. Like, they are running against a more efficient, productive society or business or what have you.
Do you, knowing what you know about AI and how it works at this point, John, do you think that AI is actually a threat to writers?
I do. I think it is, like, in a lot of different ways. Like, I don't think I've used AI. We've talked a little offline. I think you're using it more than I am, and better than I am. But I have started to use it in some ways, and I'm like, oh, it's pretty good. Like, even here, I'll say this, even for just doing like things like fact checking. Every writer wants to make sure you get stories right. The days like where you have to call a professor and say, hey, like, is this quote accurate, or is this AI is helpful in that. Now, you got to be careful. It's sort of like Wikipedia. Like, I used to use WikiQuote for this, but WikiQuote can be wrong too. And AI can get things wrong. You have to make sure you're asking the right questions. You have to say, okay, I want a source for that, and then say, okay, here you go. And then you can. Other times they say it's real, and then they're like, oh, sorry, actually that's not. So I imagine, like, every writer is going to use this in a way that's going to help them. As far as creative writing, I haven't used it in that capacity, but I hear it's very good. I hear, and that's probably one of the reasons they're hostile to it, right? Like, if Now, I'm a little skeptical of that because I've, as somebody who does a lot, I write for a living. The little I've tried to integrate it, AI sucks at writing. Like it's bad. It's like a fourth grade paper. Okay, like you can kind of see like this isn't good writing. Now it can give you a skeletal framework though to work from, and kind of things like that. It can be helpful, but I'm not impressed with AI. But it's going to get better too, right? Like it's going to improve. So I think there is, a genuine concern there for writers, and like they're saying, well, we don't want it. If you're a studio, you don't care. You want a good script. You don't care if it's a human writing for it or AI. So it'd be really foolish of studios to say, nope, we're gonna cave to these demands. And we're not gonna use AI for anything at any point in the process. And again, I would clarify though, that's a very small part of what's going on here between the writers and the studios. And I think here from the beginning, I've argued this point. This strike isn't going to go on forever. It's going to make a ton of noise because it's very politicized, right? We all are interested in our TV shows and our movies, and you have the good guys, the labor and the writers, and you have your bad guys, the studios. And so this is going to get a ton of media attention, but all of the incentives are there to get a deal done, right? Nobody, not the studios, not the writers. Every day that this strike goes on, they're potentially, losing more and more money. There are incentives there to get it done. I'm not saying it'll be done next month, but this will come to an end, and they're going to, come up with some agreement that's mutually beneficial. Like neither side will be totally happy. But my point is, most of the people that feel they're so compassionate about this and so, passionate about it, go look at like this is mostly legalese. They're just haggling over some numbers. Each side's trying to protect themselves, and that's it. That's okay. Like that's kind of how should play out. The worst thing is like if you go back to like the railroad strike, where you had railroad strike workers that were striking, and they rejected the contract. And the Biden administration's like, no, you have to take it. Sorry. And they forced the contract on them. And that's the worst part. We don't need that. Let these sides hash things out. They'll figure out an agreement. Like I said, neither side will be totally happy, but it'll work itself out because that's where the incentives lie. That's where they're going to both start making money again.
If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. We're glad to have you here. I'm speaking to Jon Miltimore. He is the managing editor. Or excuse me, he is now the editor at large at the Foundation for Economic Education. We're talking about the writers' strike ongoing in Hollywood. So, Jon, tell me this: do you think that the resolution of this involves the writers actually getting more money for streaming? Because I can imagine that if you're a writer and you're seeing your revenue coming in for streaming being absolutely nothing compared to what it used to be when you would see, VCR, tape sales and all these things. I mean, the media is constantly changing, and like obviously there needs to be, some keeping up in the times. If I was a writer and I wrote a script and I was used to getting royalties for the script for international plays on television and things like that, and then I'm getting nothing for streaming, I would probably be willing to protest and maybe even strike for something like that as well.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. And if you look, they have different ratios for different types of productions. This is all visible. You can check it out. And things like that, I think it makes sense for writers to do that. Like the business is changing, right? Like at one point it would have made sense to take more for box office because that's where the money is. Well, that's not the case anymore. But some of these things, I'll go back to the part about efficiency. Some of these demands in here say, in the green room production phase, you got to have at least 12 writers on a show. After we have 6 episodes, you got to, each one you have to start adding writers. And the studios, why would they agree to that? Like again, that's like an artificial demand. Again, it's great for union. You have more writers. You're working on behalf of workers, but there's nothing written that says you need 12 writers on an episode, right? But I'll say, how many of us have the knowledge to really look at this and say what's a reasonable thing anyway? Like so many people, I've never written for a studio. I don't know really, what would be the appropriate number. But the point is, let them figure those things out. But at its face, I don't like those kind of demands that say like you have to have X so many, because we know like that kind of runs counter to the whole idea of efficiency is good. If you can do something with 3 writers, why would you want to do it with 12?
That makes perfect sense. John, on the topic of the quality of the writing in Hollywood, do you agree with me that it does seem as if Hollywood films are downgraded because they're trying so hard to push a message?
Yeah, I think we're kind of in a dark age for, especially for film. I think some of the TV in the last 10, 15 years has been really good. The television shows, we can kind of rattle off our favorites. We know which ones we like. That some of them had great writing.
Arrested
And
Development.
Arrested Development was great. Great. Game of Thrones was, was fantastic writing. But I'll point out, like even there, once the writers didn't have the benefit of the novels, right? The novels aren't done. Like that story is still being written by George Martin. Once they got to the point where he stopped writing, the show got a lot worse. So they were benefiting from his writing as well. But I thought they adapted it great. There's been in television some really good writing. Movies are really struggling. How it's fixed, I don't know. I think we took kind of for granted how good the writing was for so long. There was great comedy. Go to comedy. There's just not a lot of good comedy being done. I think a lot of studios are afraid. Writers are a bit afraid.
They don't like to take risks, so what they do is if they have a hit movie, then they'll take it and they'll recycle it over and over and over and over again until it's dead. I mean, superhero movies, perfect example, where it feels like it's just been done to death and people are starting to sort of wane. I think that one of the more interesting conversations that's been going on this summer is how Barbie and Oppenheimer are showing that there really is a demand for original works of art rather than remakes or copies of what someone else has done. I kind of like compare this to a conversation Stephanie and I were having over the weekend in regards to like the different generations. So if Back to the Future were made today, John, he would be Marty McFly were traveling back in time, similar to how he did in Back to the Future. He would be traveling back in time from today to 1994. But and so it sparked this conversation where we were thinking about it because in the 80s he traveled back in time to the 1950s. Now, when I was a little boy and I saw Back to the Future, the 1950s felt like some kind of an ancient era, right? But then when you think about it, think about the differences in the music and the movies and the style between the 1940s, the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, and then the 1990s. But then from the 1990s until today, it almost feels as if just been this great cultural stagnation where there have been some good works of art and some things have come out that that definitely stand out, but those have really been the exception to the rule. When you think about the generations from the 1900s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you get a distinct picture in your head of the music and the art and the film that are part of that generation. But when you try and do the same thing, okay, what about 2000, 2010, 2010 to 2020, right? 2020 to 2023, it all just feels blended together. It doesn't really seem to have its own kind of cultural mark that the generations of the 1990s and 80s and 70s and 60s does. Do you agree with that analysis?
I do, but I wonder how much of that is us being too attached to those eras, right? I've thought about this as well, and if you look, my kids they loved 80s music, okay, like, but all of these movies are like they're bringing back like 80s, all these songs that they love, whether it's first Ready Player One or all the like the Transformers movies. They're bringing back these period pieces, and they love the 80s and 90s for when it's happy, right? And then I thought about it, and I said, well, a lot of 80s movies were doing the same things with songs in the 50s. But your larger point, I do agree with that. It does feel like there's been a hodgepodge, like I don't know if it started in 2000 or what, where it's a lot harder to identify what period that came from. That's not the case. You can look at the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, the 80s, and they all had a distinct feel. Like you can kind of tell, oh, that's a 80s hair band music, or this is like a 70s disco or whatever. I think that does get a lot harder. And I do think a lot of the stuff we're producing today, and again, I'm biased, but I don't think it's going to stand with the test of time, right? Like when we look back, people are still going to be listening to a lot of those 50s songs, the 80s songs. A lot of the stuff we've been producing the last 20 years, I have a lot I don't have a lot of faith that we'll be still watching those or listening to those. I think there is a decline in art, and it's not just in music and movies either. If you look at other art, we're producing a lot of crap. Postmodern art kind of sucks. I think that's what we're starting to figure out. You know, you can tape a banana to a wall and call it art. It's not art. You know, and somebody will pay, you know, $50,000 or whatever for that. But I think art is in a kind of a bad place. Hopefully we can get it turned around. But this is one of the things with culture. I think our culture is kind of a little bit too dark and not producing a lot of great stuff right now.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. We could talk about this for hours and hours. And John, I think we've got a new term for your Monday segments. We're going to start calling them, and thanks to Tolly Owens, Miltimore Monday.
I like it. Miltimore Monday it is.
We love it. Hey, John, thanks so much for your time, and we appreciate your points of view. Keep fighting for liberty, my brother. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks a lot, Austin. You have a great week.
Thanks so much. Don't forget to check out his Substack. We dropped that link over there in YouTube, and you can follow him at Miltimore79 over on Twitter. Thanks so much for that. All right, don't forget, of course, to check out our daily sponsors. Lear, today's episode of the Wake Up America show is brought to you by our friends over at Lear Capital, who provide gold and silver investments for those who want to secure their financial future. I endorse and recommend Lear Capital because not only do they have some of the absolute best deals on gold and silver, but they also have a great deal where if you buy an ounce of gold from Lear Capital, you get an ounce of silver for free. That's an excellent value. So check them out. Give them a call today and ask them about that deal. Show's almost over, so why don't you give them a call after the show? 1-800-885-2175. If you'd like to get more information about how to invest in gold and silver, perhaps put some precious metals in your Roth IRA, right? A great way to secure your future. Invest in gold and silver in a good tax advantage way. Visit LEARAUSTIN.com. That's LearAustin.com. And if you visit that website and sign up for a free gold and silver information packet, they'll send you all the information that you need in order to make a sound financial decision and to secure your future. I endorse and recommend Lear Capital because they are the precious metals leader in the United States and around the world. At 1-800-885-2175, you're going to get all your questions answered. Remember, whenever you sign up for a gold and silver information packet or you make a phone call to Lear Capital, you're also supporting the Wake Up America show. So therefore, you are also supporting the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. Give them a call today. Tell them, say, thanks so much for supporting and sponsoring the Wake Up America show as they've done for many, many months. It's really difficult to get and to maintain these kinds of advertisers, and it's not like we're the biggest show in the world. So just your one phone call today helps to secure the future of the program, and we're very grateful to you for doing so. Give them a call, 1-800-885-2175, or visit LearAustin.com. Our friend Tolly Owens was asking a serious question about comedy. She says that she hasn't found a good comedy, funny show in a long time, accepting recommendations. The only ones that I can think of off the top of my head right now, that if you haven't seen the movie of What We Do in the Shadows, Tolly, watch it. It's absolutely hilarious, but that's only a movie. If you're looking for a show that you can binge watch that's really funny, I like Arrested Development. It's a little tough to get into in the beginning, but once you get past like the first few episodes, you kind of get the humor. You'll love it. So Arrested Development, a great comedy series that I recommend for people who want to binge watch something. If you haven't seen that one, check it out. What We Do in the Shadows, a TV show, also pretty good, but not as good as the movie, in my opinion. So what did you think about the Wake Up America show today, huh? Did you click the like button yet? I've got a better chance of getting you to click the like button on this stream than I ever do of having Camelia Peterson write a review of the coffee and the items she's bought from APforLibertyShop.com. Now, I love Camelia Peterson, and she's a monthly supporter of this show, so I can't complain about much about Camelia Peterson. She comes on this show every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 a.m. She is a good friend. But I think that it's definitely, you've better shot at getting a drink of ice water in hell that Camelia is going to ever write a review of the items on APforLibertyShop.com. We've got delicious coffee. We send it out to our customers, and then they don't leave us a 5-star review to help us to sell more coffee. It's very easy. But easier than that is just clicking that like button. Justin Peterson, my brother, says, I identify so much with Larry David. He don't give a F. Yes. I do love Curb Your Enthusiasm. Great show. Thank you for that, Justin. If you've got more good ideas of shows please definitely drop them below before we leave. All right. Thanks so much for watching the show today. We will see you tomorrow when we have Camellia Peterson on the show at 8 a.m. And maybe Justin Peterson will make an appearance himself this week, maybe on Family Friday. We'll see. And then, of course, this weekend, it's a big Cantina Crow float trip. Hope to see many of you in person for the very first time. Looking forward to it as we celebrate the upcoming 1-year anniversary of the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.